Remember last week, we talked about this petition that was delivered to the governor's office with 21,000 signatures on it from Erie, Colorado.
Yeah, there was a little funniness going on.
Yeah, there was
that.
a lot of funniness because only 100 residents from Erie actually signed it.
Yeah, Courtney Looper, who is the Western Field Director for Energy in Depth, wrote a nice opinion piece that appeared in the Denver Post, and I was shocked it actually made it into the Post. They actually reported the truth for once, but it was kind of amusing because it talked about the fact that the fracking going on in Erie is not necessarily opposed by as many residents as this group appeared to make it. They tried to pull a little bit of sleight of hand on this, but it was kind of amusing because you hear about the story, then you hear about the opinion piece, then all of a sudden this weekend, in the Colorado Independent, Troy Hooper opens up a brand new story. Now remember, this is after Courtney's opinion piece. Fracking operation in Erie begins near 2 elementary schools, wakes up the neighborhood. And editors note, this is the first in a multi-part series that will continue next week. So this is from Friday. Flaggers in bright yellow vests stopped traffic on the parkway here Wednesday as a convoy of semi-trailer trucks rumbled toward Red Hawk Elementary, hauling sound barriers to muffle a gas extraction project that is vexing many residents.
Does that mean 3?
Well, we don't know. That's the problem. There's a lot of this in this story. Despite its close proximity to homes in Red Hawk, Erie, and Erie elementary schools, the gas project falls within a state's regulations that dictate a 150-foot setback in rural areas and 350 feet in developed areas. Actually, I believe it over doubles that, as was pointed out by Courtney in the story. But this is pretty funny. The noise is 24 hours, 7 days a week. It's waking people up at night, and this is only the beginning. The drilling hasn't even started yet, and the truck traffic is ridiculous already, said Jennifer Palazzo, whose daughter is a second grader at Red Hawk Elementary. She is among a group of mothers and children who recently marched to Encana's headquarters in Denver with a petition signed by 21,000 people demanding the company pull the plug on the project. Now, we have with us one of Courtney's fellows at Energy in Depth, Simon Lomax, who's the research director. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this whole story here because there's a little more detail to it. And there's some facts have been
left out,
maybe misinterpreted by the writers of these stories. Simon, welcome to the show.
Hi. It's great to be with you guys. Thank you.
Now, tell us a little bit about Energy in Depth.
Well, Energy in Depth is a research and education campaign of the Independent Petroleum Association of America. And the Independent Petroleum Association of America is the trade association that represents the independent oil and gas companies that develop, about 95% of all the oil and gas wells that are developed in our country. So if you're talking about hydraulic fracturing, you're talking about our membership.
That's exactly, and you're talking about something that is about to boom here in Colorado, depending on what city you're talking about.
Well, Longmont's trying to ban it. Boulder, I think, already did.
Boulder banned it. Longmont's considering putting it on the ballot for a ban. Now, Erie is a special case because, number one, you had this 21,000-person signed document delivered to both, and I'm trying to think of the company here. Is it Encana?
Yeah, that's right. It's in Encana.
And it was in Encana and the governor's office. Of course, they had the cameras following them as they delivered this. But, Simon, tell us a little bit about this actual who was responsible for this petition.
Right. Well, Courtney took a closer look at who all actually signed this petition. And the first thing to know about the petition is that the petition drive was not so much done by Erie Rising, but it was actually run by a Washington-based environmental group called Food and Water Watch. And it was an online petition, and so 21,000 sounds like a pretty big number, right?
Well, yeah, the entire town's, I think, got 22,000 people in it, somewhere around there.
Exactly. But you look actually behind, you sort of scratch the surface, and you suddenly discover that most of these people don't come from Erie. In fact, most of them don't come from Colorado. We found that in fact there were more people from outside the country who signed the petition than inside of Erie. So you had people from Greece and Spain and Germany and dare I say, even Australia, where I grew up, who signed this petition. More people from those countries than people from Erie. And when you're talking inside the country, it may come as a great shock to you to learn that about 9,000 of those signatures came from California, New York, and Massachusetts.
Yes, ignorance is widespread among all countries and all states. That's the sad part. It is actually funny. So, and you know a little bit more about this. Courtney had talked about in her article that this group, Erie Rising, brought in an expert to talk about how bad the air pollution was because of fracking in Erie.
Right. This happened a few months ago, and on the basis of what this lone federal researcher from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, based on what he said, and based on the spin that Erie Rising put on it, the town sort of decided to support a moratorium on approving new oil and gas development. At the same time, the town thought maybe we should look into this a little bit more. Maybe we should ask some experts about what this guy said, and it turned out that the emissions that he was talking about, the substances that he said had been detected in the air, were about 1,000 times less than any kind of public health threshold or benchmark, which is to say that they basically put this lone data point out there completely out of context and forgot to mention that it wasn't actually a health problem at all. And so basically they scared a lot of people in the town of Erie, and they scared the elected representatives who represent them, really for no good reason.
Well, and it's funny because the author obviously doesn't know, whether he knows or doesn't bother to take that into consideration. Right in this story, in March, after a NOAA report showed levels of propane, a chemical used in fracking, 10 times higher in Erie than in other cities, town leaders imposed a 180-day moratorium on new well permits.
Right. I mean, I think the headlines coming out of that presentation from the federal employee from NOAA, the headlines coming out of there were, that Erie has worse air quality than Houston or Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's the implication. And you need to know something real quick, Simon. I live 4 miles from Erie, and it's beautiful. I mean, there is no I drive through it every day.
I've got customers there. I'm up there all the time.
I drive through it every day. It's the biggest joke I've ever seen. I mean, the air is beautiful. The land's beautiful. I've never seen an issue, heard an issue, or anything as far as fracking is concerned.
Right. Well, and imagine, waking up one morning and reading the newspaper and hearing that your air quality is worse than Houston and Los Angeles. I mean, that's not something that, folks in Erie or, frankly, anywhere in Colorado would want to wake up and read.
Well, what's funny, though, is
there was no basis for it.
What's funny is this picture that they have in the article that they use. You can see the drills and the rigs going down into the ground, and you can also see about 30 miles to the mountain range. I mean, you can see them clear as a bell. And so in Los Angeles, you can't see your face. I mean, you cannot see your fingers.
Right.
But we can see the mountain range clear as a bell, even in the picture.
Well, and here's some other interesting parts. Wendy Leonard, who rents a home in the neighborhood, told 9 News and the Daily Camera that she is concerned about the project's emissions and the potential for groundwater contamination. Now, we've documented here that in one case, which is actually questionable.
No, it's more than questionable.
Well, it's funny because I'll actually show you where this is said here. That in one case they found any evidence of groundwater contamination, and the EPA's testing data was off on that test, and they're having to go back. The writer here actually says the Environmental Protection Agency linked hydraulic fracturing to groundwater contamination in Wyoming last year, and it is in the midst of a 2-year study on its potential health impacts. They leave out the fact that they're having to reconsider that data completely.
Right. What you're seeing there is, an attempt to get around the fact that federal and state regulators, time and time again, have first of all, state regulators have been very effectively regulating the oil and gas industry, and specifically hydraulic fracturing, since the 1940s, and there hasn't been a single case of water contamination. And the EPA has also confirmed that there hasn't been a single verified case of groundwater contamination. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't really matter to the environmental groups who, frankly, have an ideological grudge against the oil and gas industry.
Well, they also...
And so they just keep saying things that, aren't true, are meant to frighten people, and unfortunately, you have reporters sometimes who just pick up those things and print them as if they're true without checking their facts.
Well, and one of the things that I find fascinating is the idea that fracking is brand new. It's this brand new technology, and that's how they're selling it, because we shouldn't be doing fracking. It's brand new. It hasn't been tried. It hasn't been tested. It has never been done before. And Simon, it's been around for 70 years now?
Right. I mean, part of the sort of the campaign of misinformation that's leveled at our industry is really aimed at making people afraid, because if people are afraid of something, they'll be more inclined to support, really heavily regulating it so that it isn't cost effective, or just outright banning it. And claiming that this is somehow a new technology that isn't somehow tested or that regulators don't really know about is part of that campaign of fear. And of course, as you know, you guys have bothered to do your research, you know that the oil and gas industry has been using hydraulic fracturing since the 1940s. It's been used over 1 million times. It has an excellent track record, and it is, whether you're talking about hydraulic fracturing or if you're talking about other steps in the oil and gas development process, I mean, you cannot get oil or gas out of shale rock without complying with multiple state and federal laws and regulations. It's tightly regulated. It is very closely overseen. And on top of that, you're dealing with an industry that is filled top to bottom with engineers and very, very safety-conscious professional people who want to do a job, do it properly, and are very proud to produce the energy that supports the American way of life.
We'll be right back with Simon Lomax, Research Director for Energy in Depth.